Well, welcome everybody. This is going to be such a fun episode because Gabriella, my guest today, and we got a chance to just chat a little bit beforehand. And when she talks to you, you're gonna know why. But I am joined by my guest, Gabrielle Pimstow, who is an ex-corporate leader turned into energy master and coach. And as I shared with Gabriella, this is an area that I know very little about. So I'm along with you listeners, fascinated to learn and to hear. So welcome, Gabriella.
Thank you so much, Carol. It's wonderful to be here. And now I've revealed the secret. I have a South African accent as well.
Right. And Gabriella still got it. I don't know if we both sound, I think you've got a great South African accent. I've tried to hang on to mine as much as possible, but some
Yes,
people tell me I'm losing it. So I think I need to go visit more often, right?
sounds like a good plan.
Is that the cure?
That's the cure. If you move to Sydney, half of Sydney's South African, so
Yes,
you'll keep your
right.
accent.
I have to share that before we started this, I peeked at Gabriella's profile on LinkedIn and I saw the University of Cape Town and I was like, no, this is not possible. Yeah, did she choose to go and study there or is she from South Africa? But I'd love to tell our listeners just a little bit about you being an energy coach who's just dedicated to assisting those on the cusp of change and maybe
Yeah.
in need of that crucial nudge forward.
Yes, yes, we
Um,
really are, because most of the time we'll continue with the status quo until we get that wake-up call.
that it's time to
And
change.
that it's time to change. That's just human nature, Carol. But my journey was one, I morphed from psychology into the world of energy. But the golden
Mm.
thread, I guess, that links both of those is the notion of human transformation. How do people
Mm.
change? What are some of the barriers we experience when we're going through change? And there are common barriers. And so
Right.
I kind of help people move through the process of change with greater ease, but also greater joy and fulfillment. Because a lot of people say, especially in the corporate world, oh, people resist change. And I actually challenge that notion. I think people resist change when it doesn't move them forward in their life, but actually we're all innately programmed to regenerate, to
Right.
grow, and
Right.
to blossom into the best version of ourselves. And you can't do that without change. So my whole journey has been about helping people, traverse challenges and change. And I do that from two different vantage points.
So I'm excited to just learn along with my listeners, as I said, and I love one of the things you said is it's never too late to make meaningful change.
No, it isn't. And, I've heard so many people say I'm too old to change. But I was 50 years old when I made a really big decision to shift the course of my career. I mean, I'd been in the field of organizational psychology for 27 years. For the majority of the time, it was a wonderful career, very fulfilling on so many levels. But in the final few years, I started to feel really encumbered by corporate politics, corporate bureaucracy, all of the things that stopped me from really making the kind of impact that I wanted to make. And so when I was 50, I was at an inflection point, and I very easily could have continued with the corporate grind. But I actually listened to a podcast, and that was a really big catalyst in my life. And so, I'm a living, walking, breathing example of, change. Big change is possible well into our lives.
And now you have me intrigued. So I do need to know a little more about this podcast encounter that sparked this shift, this change.
Oh, okay, yes. So, I guess to you it might sound innocuous, but it was a really big aha moment for me. I woke up, it was during the pandemic. I woke up on a Sunday morning. I was a senior leader in a big bank here in Australia, and I hated my job. In fact, I knew a week after I took the job that I'd made a really bad mistake. And I was now in like month 7 or 8, and I was overwhelmed with anxiety, with absolute dissonance, disconnect. And I woke up on this Sunday morning with this really giant pit in my stomach. And when I tuned in, Carol, I realized it was because I had to dial into meetings the following day. The following day was Monday. I had to do work. And I took myself off for a beautiful bushwalk here, and I put on my AirPods and I listened to a podcast, and the topic of the podcast was something around anxiety, which intrigued me because I'd always lived with so much anxiety in my life, and now I was feeling overwhelmed with anxiety because of the circumstances of my job. And I was listening to this woman being interviewed. Her daughter had been involved in a really bad car accident years before. The young woman had had to learn to walk again, but thankfully she'd made a really miraculous recovery. She got married, and now she was expecting her first child. So the woman being interviewed was about to become a grandmother for the first time. She couldn't enjoy the moment. She spoke about, this ever since her daughter was involved in the accident, she'd been living her life in this invisible spiritual prison, always waiting for the other shoe to fall. That was me. Sometimes when you listen to somebody's story, and this is the power of language and words, waiting for the other shoe to drop, that was my experience. I lost my dad when I was 9 years old, and I'd spent my entire life waiting for the other shoe to drop. It had infiltrated every aspect of my life. And when I heard this woman talk so, heartfelt about her experience with anxiety and her relationship with anxiety, that was my moment. I decided I don't want to live in this invisible spiritual prison. I got to do something that's within my influence to shift my life and reduce the stimulus, the things that make me even more anxious. So that was the power of podcasts, which is why I love guesting on podcasts.
Absolutely. And I thank you for sharing that, Gabriella, because it's just so powerful, people's stories.
Yes.
There's always a section or a little piece that can just resonate, or it's just what we need, as you say, to
Yes.
push us over the edge and go, let's evaluate, what's really going on here. And then that beauty of it's never too late. It really isn't. So for those that are listening, wherever you are in your life, let's explore what this energy mastery is. What is it? Yeah, and how do individuals get this major life transition?
Oh, well, firstly, I probably need to explain why I was attracted to it. When we change, there's either a push or a pull factor. And for me, when I was at this juncture in my life, not knowing what to do with my career, feeling like I was coming to the end of my corporate journey, because I'd been working in psychology for so many years, been in therapy for so many years, I try to apply some of the psychological techniques, and my toolbox wasn't working for me anymore. And so I was the universe was almost saying to me, you got to find another way of healing and moving through this. And I was thinking about what other modality is there other than psychology, when a few days later I got this advert popped up in my Instagram feed, and it was somebody who was talking about a weekend workshop. Come and join us, all about energy. And I thought, you know what, it cost $10, let me go. And I did it, and that landed up being my teacher. I landed up studying with him for 18 months. And what it was and what he was saying was the following: that energy runs the show. You can work at a emotional level, you can work with your identity, the stories you tell yourself, your thoughts, your limiting beliefs, and all of that's really great. It's necessary, and it's so important to have a sense of self-awareness. But all of those are actually, all they are is energy, and they have an energetic root. And it's the blocks that we experience in our life have an energetic inception point. And when we go back to that inception point and we clear the energy around the experiences or the events that have happened to us, that have left us traumatized, when we clear that energetic level, that's when change happens quickly and sustainably. So that was why I moved in, and it was almost like an evolution, another tool to throw into my toolkit when it comes to helping people shift and change.
That I can feel, that just it almost gives me goosebumps to just
Oh,
realize that, just coming to that acknowledgement. And I hear you, all the other parts, there's seasons when we decide we need to
yes.
explore that. For me, all of a sudden, I have resisted for the longest time the inner child work, and gone, not going there, not going there. And it just took a conversation with somebody who's actually a coach in the same circle that I coach with positive intelligence. And she said, could I just explore this with you? Could we just do some visualization and some questions? And often it's the right person. So that's the other
Yes.
thing to remember, is
Yes.
that we're attracted to certain people, or certain people come in our path. And we had a beautiful experience. And now she's opened up my mindset and gone, well, stop blocking this, and start
Yes.
exploring. I'd love to just, on that note, when I'm talking about blocking, what are some common signs that people can recognize and go, my energy is being blocked?
Well, I'll answer that, and then I want to go back and talk to you about inner child work, because you can do it from a psychological angle and an energetic angle. I could talk to you about how I approach both of those. But the sign that you've got an energetic block is when you keep having the same experiences and you don't know why. So it's all in the patterns and the themes in our life. So, an example might be, and that can manifest physically, it can manifest emotionally, it can manifest behaviorally, all those things. And so an example, a very simple example might be, people commonly have blocks when it comes to financial freedom and making money. That would be an example. Same with regards to relationships. They can permeate any aspect of our lives. Sometimes people have a block in, really stepping into their full potential. I've worked with people who've had blocks when it comes to that manifested as sleep disorders, right? So they can't sleep. The block is something else. But so they're all sorts, but there's a pattern that you can't break and you don't understand. That's how you know.
Sort of a repetition, that it's
A repetition.
that it's coming up. That's
exactly.
right. Yeah, but let's go back to the inner child, because I'm
Can we
sure
go back to it?
absolutely.
Firstly, timing is everything, and
Absolutely.
the same offer at one point in time versus another point in time is going to yield very different results, and it is also the person. But inner child work is, you can't get away from it, because at the end of the day, there are things that we carry in our lives that generally the pathology we experience in our lives, these repetitive patterns we don't understand, they have their inception point in childhood, sometimes actually in utero as well, but in childhood. So, how I approach that from an energetic perspective is I get clear on what the person wants to work on, and then I go in and I read their energy. And what that does is I've got the tools and techniques to be able to go back to actually read their energy across the entire timeline from when they were born to where they currently are. And what that does, so for example, silly example, if I'm working with somebody's energy, I pick up like a block in their heart chakra, which is, the seat of our connection, love, relationships, all of that. Then I can go into their childhood and interrogate, what is this about? When did this start? When did their heart close down? Or when did they develop a fear of intimacy, or whatever it is that I'm picking up? And I will go back to their childhood, and that's where I clear the root. So I'm feeling the manifestation of it in the here and now in their heart chakra, but the root started in childhood. So that's where I go, and I will pick up where it happened. I'll release the energetic root, and then when the person comes out of the session with me, we'll talk about that, and I'll say to them, like, I worked with a time in your life when you were da 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 da, and they'll go, oh yes, that's exactly what happened. Or, when I was 4 years old, my mother shut me down. I'm just giving you examples.
Absolutely, an example, yeah.
Yeah, so it really is, you can't avoid that. And, a lot of us don't like inner child work, because it's painful, it's difficult, it's traumatic.
Yeah. But and I hear that, and that's obviously why I've avoided it for whatever. How many years? I won't tell you. But the little bit of research that I've done on it, the reward that comes after that.
Yes.
So, as I love what you're offering, and this, finding the right approach for you, and that as it's been for me, these conversations, sometimes it's just the right words. You hear the way, and here we come back to communication and words, because sometimes things can be so overwhelming and too complicated that we avoid them.
That's exactly right. I mean, it felt like you were reading my mind when you said that, because I was thinking along the same lines as you were talking. One way that we can access our inner child, is through words, through language, working with somebody who keeps saying to me, oh, I'm an idiot, or I'm such an idiot, that gives me a really strong sense or clue as to there's a strong, there's a big wound there. They must have had some critical parent, judgmental upbringing, and so that takes us down that route. So sometimes, people talk about language that gives me a sense that they live with a lot of fear, which, by the way, I relate to, like I can't do that, or I'm not allowed to, or whatever, I'm making stuff up. But, that really does give us a sense, because energy is invisible. If you want to really get a sense of what's going on beneath the surface, watch your language. What are the words you use when you talk to yourself or when you talk to others? They give us a really strong sense of our inner child and what's happening. And I think it's very powerful.
Yeah, that's so important. Because even just that shift of, the energy that you feel when you wake up in the morning, if you're focusing on negative words and negative aspects and allowing yourself to go there, how do you expect to feel happiness and joy? Because that's not,
right.
that's not that and I'm sure you probably have some thoughts on this as well, not that one needs to avoid negativity.
No.
And they need their words, and they need that exploration, and it deserves time.
It does.
It's not just go, I'm angry, push that aside. Okay, I've got to quickly get to happiness and joy. So let me go and, do some exercise.
It's inauthentic, it's unrealistic, and I'm not into that at all. I'm into emotional authenticity. But there are ways, and this is actually a lesson I've learned from my own journey, which is the difference between feeling an emotion and exploring it and going into it versus being the emotion, where it actually takes over. So for many, many years, as I said earlier, anxiety has been a big thing in my life. Right. And for so many years, it was a huge part of my identity. I was anxious. I was anxiety. It was all of me. If you'd have met me, Carol, within 5 seconds, you would have picked up my frequency of fear, anxiety.
Right.
But what I've learned and the work that I've done on myself is, how do I feel the anxiety without it taking over me? Because actually, when your emotions take over you, you can't do the work. Right. So you've got to actually have a little bit of an emotional space between yourself and the emotion, still feeling it, but you want to explore it. So it's a tricky balance, and it's a skill to be learned. It's the pause.
I know now, and there was something I was going to mention or ask you about, and there we go, chakras. You mentioned bringing the chakras in, and I love that, because I know a little bit about that. I've just touched on them, but obviously that there's a combination between the energy field and identifying your chakras and what's blocking each one.
Yes. So we've got a physical body, which we all know about, and then we've got an energetic body, which we can't see, but it's actually is very powerful, and it runs the show in many ways. So the energetic body is made up of your aura, your meridians, but also your chakras. And there are actually a lot of chakras, but typically we look at 7 chakras, and what they are is they're really just points in the energetic body which correlate or correspond to parts of our physical body. that represent each, I would like to think of it at each point. It's where energy comes together, constellates, and each of the 7 chakras, the energy is different. It has like a different theme. So for example, I've already spoken about the heart chakra, which it's more around our social identity, our identity around connection and love. Whereas, the throat chakra is around how we express ourselves. The solar plexus is around, which is between your belly button and your heart, is around your sense of personal power and how you authorize yourself and the agency you give yourself. So each one's got a different thematic. And when I find a block in a particular chakra, it's already kind of narrowing the field for me, because if it's in the throat, I know there's something around expression, creativity,
Oh, well, when you talk about throat, and it's just, the work I do with positive intelligence is we work on recognizing what our saboteurs are in these loud voices, other than the judge, but there are another 8 different ones of them.
Yes.
And one of them is the avoider. And so you
Yes.
avoid conflict and you avoid speaking up for yourself. And I'm just, as you're talking to me about throat chakra, I'm going, when your throat is feeling sensitive and you are deep in this avoiding situation with that voice loud, and I could see, so I'd be fascinated to see how this could wrap around together with this.
Yes.
Identifying the saboteurs that derail you, and the parts of your body that work in association
exactly
with them.
Exactly.
So, fantastic.
It's so interesting, because what you're describing is 2 different kind of different manifestations of the saboteur or the block in your in your throat. So energy blocks can manifest in 2 different ways. They can either be an excess of something or a deficiency of something. The deficiency of something is the avoider. That would be an example. And I bet if we went through all the 8 archetypes, we could divide them into one or the other, right? So there's the too little, the avoider, and then too much, the excess, is the dominating voice, the voice that can't shut down, the angry voice,
right? So we have that as the controller. And so we're trying to control the situation when, oh my goodness, this is absolutely fascinating.
Yes,
This
yes.
really is. That,
so
well,
I would
we could go on forever. This is really wonderful. And I do want people to know, if they want to connect with you, how to find out more. But before we go there, any advice for somebody who might be skeptical? I mean, I am all open to what you've been sharing with me, but there are going to be listeners that are going to be a little skeptical about energy healing and its effectiveness.
Yes, there are. And, I come from a long line of Western medical doctors. My late grandfather was a general practitioner. My late father was a professor of endocrinology. My brother is a physician and in genetics. And my childhood sweetheart, who I went through university with, is an anaesthetist. So I am not a woo-woo out there kind of person, and I respect healthy skepticism. What I will say is, modalities like Reiki, like acupuncture, and the energy work that I do, they have been around for thousands and thousands of years. They haven't gone through pharmaceutical testing, but they've gone through clinical observation, in the sense that, people have been going to these kinds of alternative healings for thousands of years, and they've walked away feeling better, experiencing change in their life. And that's why they've endured for so long. So I would say, I would talk a little bit about that to people. I would also say that, go onto the website of the Cleveland Clinic, for example. And all these big hospitals, actually, in America, a lot of them are offering Reiki.
Yes.
As complementary.
Right.
And that's what it's all about.
Absolutely. I mean, I've seen that myself in the cancer treatment, and recommending, that these alternative, which is fantastic. It's absolutely wonderful, that the recognition and then the association, and for you to have the background that you have. I certainly think that you're in a much stronger place to address those people that are wanting to know, feeling a little bit skeptical.
Yeah.
Gabriella, is there something that you're working on right now, or something? I know that we had a link for a call to action for people who might want to know a little more about this energy immersion. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. Well, from a change perspective, what I learned in my own life is that the times where I have really been able to release my biggest blocks have been the times where I've really immersed myself in it. And to the point earlier, not ignoring the emotion, leaning into it. And so what that means, what I've designed, it's usually taken me in my past about 21 days, 3, maybe 4 weeks to really release deep blocks. And in that time, I have lovingly poured attention and energy into the process. I have witnessed myself in it. I have used techniques that I know about to release blocks, and I've patiently waited for the block to release. And when it releases, it's just the most incredibly blissful experience. So there's something I realized about immersion that makes change, that speeds up change. And so I've designed a 28 days to healing program where it's in groups, it's really affordable, and it enables people to get together in a small intimate group and to work through their biggest block. And in that process, I'm teaching you things, but I'm also doing healings and release work. So you know, I'm doing some of the heavy lifting for you. And I can guarantee you that if you focus and you do the right things and you pour loving attention onto your biggest block, you can release it within 28 days, because that's been my experience. So that's what the program's about.
That is fantastic. And I will be making sure that the link is in the show notes. Is there anywhere else people are wanting to connect with you, find out more? What is the best space in our social media world to find you?
Well, Instagram. Follow me on
Lovely.
Instagram and DM me. But also just hop onto my website, because there are different ways that you can connect with me. Not everyone's on Instagram. There are different ways to connect with me there.
Very inspiring. This is absolutely wonderful, and thrilled to be able to talk to a fellow South African. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for hosting this wonderful podcast and just being out there, giving a platform. Like I got that platform to get help. You're doing it. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for listening today. If our conversation has sparked some inspiration for you, or you could just, somebody comes to mind that you think of, they need to listen to this episode, I ask you please to go ahead and share it with others. And today, I encourage you, embrace your own unique way of connecting, inspiring, or creating, and let it bring a sense of joy into your world. In my role as a coach, I love to work with women, business owners, entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, and help them explore fresh ways to focus on their projects, find the right tools for accountability, and learn how to build a positive mindset, which in turn allows for more empathy, not only for yourself, but for others and situations. With my personalized accountability and progress coaching, which I combine with the powerful positive intelligence program, you will find ways to shift into an overall happier space. If you would like to take the complimentary saboteur assessment, I offer a follow-up complimentary coaching session to help you explore your results. Do take a note of the link in the show notes or visit my site, carolclegg.com. Until the next time, thanks for listening.